welcome to the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. My name is Callie Platek, and I'm TCAF's Marketing and Communications Manager. And I'm really pleased that you're joining us today for this panel with a very to-the-point title, Parenting and Comics. Being a parent is rarely simple or straightforward, but being a parent and an artist is a whole other can of worms. Before we get started, the Toronto Comic Arts Festival would like to honor and acknowledge the original caretakers of this land, the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. We are in a territory that was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, Haudenosaunee, and allied nations to share and care for the land. We also acknowledge that this area is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. TCAF makes this acknowledgement as a reminder that we are all treaty people and that we have a responsibility to the land and to each other. This acknowledgement is a touchstone in our process of thinking through what it means to live and work on colonized land and is an expression of solidarity with our Indigenous siblings. TCAF commits to strengthening its relationships with Indigenous communities in Toronto and increasing Indigenous voices and perspectives in our programming. And now, I'm excited to introduce your panel moderator for this evening, Aaron Broverman.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aaron Broverman. I am a freelance journalist. I write full-time for a living. But why I am here is because I have a child, my son Wells, with my wife Brittany. He just turned 1 on May 5th. And I used to host a podcast called Speech Bubble, which is available on Never Sleeps Network at neversleepsnetwork.com, where I basically interview people who do comics in Toronto and the surrounding area. But since I've had Wells, the podcast has been on hiatus, but we're hoping we can bring it back. I have a grant that I received recently during COVID, so hopefully, very soon you'll see more of the podcast come back. So because I'm a recent parent, I've been called on to host this panel, and I'm honored to be hosting it on Mother's Day. I think we should acknowledge all the mothers who allow us to be here, including my lovely wife Brittany, and all the mothers who are here today making time for this panel. But let me introduce all of the guests that we have for you today. First, we have Shira Spector. Shira is a Jewish Canadian lesbian cartoonist. She draws inspiration from theatricality in all its forms. She is the recipient of multiple grants from the Canada Council for the Arts, Ontario Arts Council, Toronto Arts Council, as well as the the Change and Sustainable Arts Foundation Award. Her debut graphic novel, Red Rock Baby Candy, is published by Fantagraphics and has to deal with her coping with the loss of her father while struggling and trying to get pregnant herself. We also have Dakota McFadzean. Dakota is a Canadian cartoonist who has been published by Mad Magazine, The New Yorker, The Best American Comics, and Funny or Die. He's also worked as a storyboard artist for DreamWorks, and he's an alumni of the Center for Cartoon Studies. He has 2 books available from Conundrum Press, Other Stories and The Hearst You Rode In On, and Don't Get Eaten by Anything. And his latest book from Conundrum Press is To Know You're Alive, which looks a lot at, childhood from the child's perspective. There's a little bit at the end where he's parenting his son and watching Mr. Rogers, but I really liked the fact that it focused on a lot of those times when we were kids, when the adults aren't around. We also have Keiler Roberts. Keiler Roberts makes autobiographical comics. She's the recipient of the Slate Cartoonist Studio Prize for her book Chlorine Gardens, and is the author of Powdered Milk, Happy Happy Baby Boy, Miseryland, Rat Time, and Sunburning, which was translated into Spanish as a book called Isolada. She's also the winner of an Ignatz Award, and she teaches comics at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago. And her latest book is called My Begging Chart from Drawn and Quarterly. My Begging Chart is based on a chart that her daughter made, basically keeping track of the times that she begged and when she was able to get away with it. We also have Catherine Ocelot. Catherine is a Montreal-based cartoonist originally from Quebec City, and she began her career at the CBC as a designer and art director. She has collaborated on a variety of television publishing and occasionally performance projects. Her works explores communication, other ways of speaking with one another, and the influence other people have on others' lives. She brings to light wondrous and sad moments that are woven into the fabric of relationships with a playful, melancholic humor. Her latest book is called Art Life, and it sort of continues that look at relationships, but with a much more absurdist vein, I would say. A lot of the issues that she deals with as far as balancing art and parenting feature characters with what look like sweaters over their heads. So we'll have to ask her about that. That book is from Conundrum as well, and it's called Art Life. Okay. So, all right, you guys. Thank you. Welcome to the panel. I hope everybody's doing well. Awesome. So I guess I'll start with a question. We're all, because of the pandemic, we've all been in various states of lockdown. And I know as a parent, it's been very hard for me and my wife, Brittany, to sort of juggle a lockdown with, it's not how we pictured our first year of parenting. And, I have to work as well because I work as a writer. So I'm wondering from each of you, how do you balance doing art and doing your various cartooning projects with the conditions of the pandemic and parenting as well? How has that been for you? Do you want to each share one anecdote from this past year?
There are no stories from this year.
No?
It's all just like one big gray blobby mass, right?
That is accurate.
Yeah.
I always find it hard to try to figure out how I'm gonna write and parent at the same time. Has it been kind of a task to balance parenting and figure out those roles?
I can say, I mean, I have an 18-year-old, so I'm very privileged. I do not have to do the things I had to do when I was writing Red Rock Baby Candy.
Right.
So for me, being able to fall into my work has been a place of escape from the pandemic. When you get into that groove of making art, you are in a better place. So for me, it's been medicinal to whenever I'm able to get to my drawing table. But I suppose if you had younger children, I know if you have younger children, it's difficult to get to the actual physical space of working. So yeah, I'm in a good place with that. How about you guys?
Yeah,
Anybody? Who is the littlest kid?
I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old.
2-year-old. Oh my goodness. Okay, you go ahead.
Yeah, please. I want to hear from you, Dakota.
Well, it's not going great. I mean, the kids are fine, but in terms of the balance between art and children, my wife was on leave when she had our 2-year-old, so I was working during that time. And when she went back to work, I'm the primary caregiver now. So not that schools are open, but if they were open, I would be the stay-at-home parent. We're all at home. You've all lived through the pandemic. You know what it's like. We're all at home all the time. So during my 2-year-old's naps, I get maybe an hour to an hour and a half to answer emails and stay on top of any administrative duties that my career still has. And that's usually interrupted by my 5-year-old who would like to, watch some cool videos of marbles going down something, or he wants to interact, or we try to go for a walk, or, we try to do something constructive, more constructive than kindergarten Zoom meetings, which are not particularly constructive. My evenings are free. I can't really go to my studio right now because of COVID, and some of the other artists aren't as careful about masks or distance or anything like that. So it hasn't been great, honestly. I make feigned attempts to still cartoon in my sketchbook in the evenings, but I'm trying to view it as a sabbatical. I'm somebody who has pushed myself really hard with what I do, and sort of have traditionally prided myself on doing a lot of work all the time, and I've sort of just let that melt away, hoping that it will come back someday. But it's a knock at your identity for sure. You sort of lose sight of yourself because you're just sort of not doing the thing that you set out to do. And children are wonderful, but there's a hole missing for sure.
Cool, awesome. I guess if no one else has anything to add, I'll move on to my next question. One of the things that I've struggled with since having Wells, because I'm a writer, is, I have written about him a little bit. I wrote about his birth on Huffington Post, and now I find myself struggling with like how much to include about my son, because the internet lives forever, and like how much do I want to say, and how much do I want to be truthful, and what kind of character do I want to make, because they become characters in my work. And each of you sort of featured your children in various ways, maybe with years of perspective, or maybe it's a more immediate thing for you. But how did you decide how much of your kids to include in your work, and what to keep real and what to keep private, and that sort of thing?
I can start with that. I mean, my daughter I started making comics like the year before I became pregnant. And so, like the pregnancy, everything has been a big part of my comics. And she's, in this last book, being at home with her and my husband, like she is the main character. It's a lot of her. And she's always read my work. She's always like been aware of what I'm doing. And when she was little, she always went to comics conventions with us, because my husband was also tabling with me, and we never had, like, my parents took her a couple times, but like you can't, whatever, there's only so much you can count on them for. It's a lot to take a little kid for the weekend. So she would just be there with us, and knowing what's going on. And I would, like, now she reads everything and proofreads it, and I have a very good sense of what would embarrass her. So there's almost never something that she says like, oh, leave that out or something. There was a time when she was probably around 8 or 7, I started really questioning it, like, oh, is she going to suddenly like get shy on my publication date, and then decide, like, take it all back or something. There was like one moment where there was a reading that I was doing in a bookstore where she was there, and she was going to read her lines, sort of like really participate. And right before the event, she had seen it and practiced and everything. She saw like people there in the audience. And then she's like, oh no, Mom, I'm not going to read my lines. So she just sat next to me, and it was completely fine, of course. But I got, like nervous, and it seemed like everybody was asking that question, like just like this assumption, like she's going to cut you off at some point, and then you're going to have no material, So like in sunburning, like I really confronted it, the whole idea of it, like, what are we doing when we're putting our kids' stuff out there? But when I compare what I put out there in my comics to what almost every other parent puts out there on social media, like, it's not like she's so much more exposed than anybody else. Parents are writing quotations and showing photographs and all that stuff. And I'm like, a cartoon is like more removed than a photograph and less embarrassing a lot of times. And a lot of these parents, since they're not artists, they're not really considering that much how their kids feel about all these things the way I am. And then I made a joke about it in the book. It was like, you know, kids are so used to sexting. You know, like I read some article in the Atlantic about how many high school kids had nude photos of themselves circulate the school because they send to their boyfriend or girlfriend, and then, you know, like they break up or whatever, and it's just like dispersed, you know? So it's like, if that happened to you in high school and you were just used to like the whole school having seen your naked body, having your mom like make edited comics about you, it just seems like so trivial. Like I think they're growing up with this sense of surveillance that we didn't have. You know, they have to know that at any given time they're being recorded, you know, and it's up to them to sort of act accordingly or be less sensitive about it. So nothing bad has happened. She's like such a good sport. She loves being a character and she loves the attention. And like, that's something I want all my characters to feel. Like, I feel like I do depict them being funny, like in a good light. And the things that are kind of shitty are not like seriously bad. They're just kind of like playful bad. Like you tease someone. So I haven't had any moments where like somebody has said, I can't believe you know, put this in. She certainly hasn't. I know it, like when I answer a question, it's like full on. You're gonna get an answer to this in 3 stories.
Yeah, but that's okay. Does anyone else have anything about that and how they, you know, balance putting their kids in their work?
I can say a little something. Like my
Sure.
daughter is part of my a part of my book. She's not a main character. Well, she's definitely there, like all over. But one way to resolve the maybe privacy issue, or to respect or be more I don't know what would be the word, like not discreet, but prude or so anyways, I'm sorry about my English.
Like
No, it's
veil?
I changed her name. It's not her real
Yeah.
name in my
Right.
book.
Yeah.
Pseudonym.
And we're all birds, so she's not recognizable. But in the book I'm working on right now, she's there, and she not as a bird, like as a real person. But like, for me, the fact that I changed her name, like she really became a character, and I make her proofread everything. I always ask her permission, but it's always fine because it's really always a bit funny when she appears, and she's always a bit laughing at me, or so it's really playful in that way. So I think it's fine, but yes, I don't show pictures of her. Like I see, like Keiler was saying, like everybody shows pictures of everybody, and the kids are so much all over the place. I don't think that it's such a big deal to
Cool.
to
I think the real question is like, how embarrassing are you as a parent? You know, because like I read memoirs, especially like prose books, you know, and somebody will write like all these details about their sex life with their partner, you know, and it's like, oh my God, they have kids that are going to read this, and their friends could read this book, and it's at the library, it's everywhere, you know, like, and it's not to say that that's a wrong thing to do. I just like, you know, I think it could be embarrassing.
I think it's really important to bring your whole person to your parenting. And I think it's good for kids to see their parents. Like, I'm one of those people who's written about my sex life. To see,
Awesome.
which it is fine, no offense. But to see like the fullness of your personhood. And I think there's also an important thing about power in storytelling. So when you're telling the story, you have a lot of power. It's all from your perspective. And that doesn't mean that's the story. So I think just when you write memoir work, I think it's important to have that same relationship with everyone who you're writing about, that sense of permission and that sense of like how to add additional levels of privacy. But with children, it's particularly tricky because, like you guys were saying, they're so integrated into your into your life, and you know, bringing your kid with you to your work, to conferences, and finding those places, like figuring out where you need to pull back and give them space to tell their own stories. Like for me, it was particularly important that I respected that I didn't start telling my kids stories for him. But I don't want to remove him from my life as much as I don't want to remove my own full personhood from my storytelling. So it's tricky. It's really, for me, it was really, it felt like it presented itself more obviously when he became older. When he was a baby, it felt like when I was writing about parenting or about having such a young child, it was clearer that it was my perspective was larger. And then as he grew and became like a fuller, not a fuller person, but as he grew, it became clearer to me where I had to start pulling back and think about that stuff more.
Is there a way that your child have inspired your work in a way that you didn't expect before you became a parent?
I'll shut up. I have stuff to say, but somebody else talk.
I didn't quite hear the question. It was breaking up for me. Sorry.
Okay, I'll repeat it. Is there a way that your children have inspired your work in a way you didn't expect before you became a parent?
But it hasn't, no, not for me, not inspired, but structured my work for sure. Like I'm so structured now, like I have my schedule, like everything revolves around that schedule of waking up very early, to cooking all the time and all that stuff. So I have to squeeze in my work into all these chunks, but it hasn't, I'd say it has, because I made this book in which she's present. So she has inspired part of my work, but besides that, I don't know if that answers your question.
I was only making comics for, like I said, like a year before my daughter came on, so I didn't have time to anticipate that. But I mean, I didn't expect her to be the way she is, you know, like to be as dynamic as she is and as funny as she is, you know, like so much of my work is just writing down what she says and just observing her. You know, it's like I don't feel like I'm writing, you know, I'm just sort of watching and waiting half the time.
The things I write about changed after having kids. And my most recent book is actually kind of evidence of that, because it collects 7 years worth of short comics, and somewhere about halfway in there, we had our first kid. And a lot of my stories before I had kids were about me as the writer looking back, usually through a somewhat nostalgic lens, to the perspective of childhood. And I found that to be really rich as subject matter, because it's all about experiencing things for the first time and sort of growing into your consciousness. And after I had kids, without even realizing it or meaning to, I sort of stopped telling stories from that perspective and started having more of an outward looking perspective in my writing. Part of that might have just been growing as a writer and becoming more comfortable with writing different characters instead of thinly veiled autobiographical magical realism stories about my own childhood. But there's a definite shift in the book, which is why I threw the intermission into the middle, because the last half of the book is stories that are more adult in their concerns and more outward looking in one way or another. So I think having children sort of probably forced me to look less inside my own navel and more outward, because now I have to help somebody else navigate this world too. And yeah, that had an impact on the way I approach writing.
Nice. We have some questions from the audience. The first question, and I can't believe we didn't touch on this. How old are each of your kids?
Can I go? Because I want to talk about how terrifically inspired I am by my child.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, so my child is 18, and everything you guys said about structuring your time, and also, to me, having a front seat view of somebody's unfolding and somebody's growth and somebody's becoming is so inspiring and delicious. Like that's why I have to constantly remind myself to, like, whoa, this isn't your story. And I guess also for myself, I'm a queer parent and my son's queer and trans. And so watching that process unfold, I can't help but juxtapose my own coming of age, my own coming out against his. And, you know, it's such a lovely counterbalance, because he's this brand new freshly minted LGBT kid, and I'm old, and our relationship and the way he navigates the world and the way I did at his age, I wrote about it in the book. But also he inspires me as an artist because he is an artist as well. This is his work behind me. And he actually like interfaces with my stuff. I don't know if you guys I think one of you talked about your kid looking at your work and editing it to a degree, but my kid will actually be like, you've got too many fingers on that hand, and arms can't go that way, right? And he'll correct my drawings, and it's beautiful. He sat on my lap and drew with me when he was little, and I would integrate his work into mine. And so to see him evolving as an artist and as a young queer, it's very inspiring.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful painting too behind you.
It's quite.
Yeah, that's really cool. Awesome. Yeah, somebody asked how old your kids are, and I just want to establish that.
2 and 5 for me.
And
Well,
Quite a range. Got all the range there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. This question is specifically for Catherine. You're saying your work has become very structured with your daughter. Was it structured before, or was it chaotic? How did you do, I guess, your work-life balance before having her?
I guess before I had my daughter, like I was just, I didn't feel, I had so much time. I had so much time to do whatever I wanted. Like I could sleep, I could go do whatever I wanted when I wanted and work when I wanted. So when, like, I don't know, it was not chaotic, but it was not structured either. Like it was just normal, I guess. I don't know. But when I had my daughter, I started, because we didn't have daycare for 2 years. It was not available. So I had to work when she was napping. And so I couldn't wait for inspiration to come. Like it was just, I had that 45 minutes. So I was sitting down and I couldn't work wait for all the conditions to be perfect. So that's what I meant, sometimes it's just like it has forced me to maybe think less and just dive into it more. But when it works, like you were talking about the pandemic, at the beginning of the pandemic, the first lockdown, it was terrible because I couldn't structure myself. Like it was just impossible to work. But when things are more normal, yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. There's also a really good question here that from the TCAF programmers that I want to get. Do you guys ever, I guess, worries in quotes, so maybe not really worry, but
Yes.
do you ever
All the time.
worry that someone's going to, like your kids are going to turn the tables and write about you, or do a comic about you, or that sort of thing?
I think it's fair game. I think that's what I'm doing to my poor parents, so I'm open to it. Seems fair.
my daughter is not that interested in making comics. And I know obviously that could change. She's only 10, but she loves to draw and she's really into fashion. Like all she's doing is designing dresses. She wants to learn how to sew more. She's really into like technology in ways that I wasn't. Coding. It's just like, I think it's kind of like she doesn't have siblings, and it's really common to look at your older siblings and think like if they choose these fields, you check them off your list. Like, oh, I can't do that because my older brother does that. Like I think like the youngest child has a really hard time being an artist if the older children are artists. And I just feel like she's like, I'm not going to be a cartoonist. Like, I don't want to be in the same realm. I could imagine her writing like a novel or something, but I don't know, just like that phrase, like getting back at you also kind of implies that like you're doing something wrong to your child by writing about them. And again, like I feel like what I'm doing is giving her a gift that almost nobody gets. I'm recording her whole childhood, all the best parts, all the funny parts, you know, like most people have like a photo album and a few videos, but like very few parents are like really that good at saving parts of childhood that like you really feel like it's worthwhile to look at when you're 30, you know, or something. You know, it's a box of artwork and like photos of events, you know. It's not like, who was I when I was 7? There's no record, no trace, and my parents don't remember that well, you know. I would like to know just for my own sake, I guess. And my daughter is always going to have that. I don't know.
Yeah, wow.
But I feel that your work is also a lot about, like, en tout cas, the way I read it, it talks about you. I mean, it's more about you than about your daughter, even if she's very present, and about your relationship with, I don't know. I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, like that, like likewise, like I wish I knew better who my parents were when I was a kid because they're so different now, you know? Like I would give anything to just like see like somebody take video of a dinner where nothing special happened, you know, when I was a child and see like how did my mom, what's changed? What, you know, how did she talk? What did she talk about? How does she really feel at that time?
I think drawing is an act of love and a way of seeing, like of actually looking carefully at things, especially the everyday. So I really like what you said about it being a gift.
Yeah, I want to go back also just before, like the example I gave about parents writing about their sex. I haven't read your book yet, and
Totally
I think
okay.
like I love it. Like though, you know, I'm a teacher. You know, you always like provide an example of something that comes to you. But I
Yeah.
love this. Like, of course, you know, like you're one of my favorite comics is Lauren Weinstein's
Mhm.
book, and like there's the most graphic picture, like she was laughing about it, she's like, and her kids are right there, obviously you're going to see it, and it is really a gift. Exactly what you said, you're really showing your child who you are completely. That I think is something that people don't talk about in the parenting books. It's always advice about like how to not be emotional in front of your kids, how to make the world feel safe to them. And it's never like, just like really be who you are and let them see what it's like that you have a real full personality and you aren't just mom or dad.
Yeah, for sure. And no worries. There is no ill will. Thanks for going back to that. That's very sweet.
I wanted to talk about like the technique you guys have chosen for your book, and the different art styles in particular, and like whether that was a conscious choice or maybe, you know, that's always been your style from the beginning and that sort of thing. Catherine in particular, you represent your characters. I think I described it as like, it looks like people have like sweaters over their heads, but then you said they were birds, and I hope that makes sense to me. I totally didn't miss something with that. But like, why did you make that choice in particular instead of just depicting the characters more straight ahead?
I started making portraits of my friends as birds like that a long time ago. I thought the idea was funny to make like portrait of specific people with quotes of stuff that they said, but they were all sort of alike. And it's just an idea that made me laugh and smile. And I don't know, like when I started to think about making this book about art life, it was just an unconscious choice. I think there might be the idea of the artist as a species, I guess, or the idea of maybe protection, or it's a book in which I'm trying to find my voice and my place and my identity. So maybe it talks about that. There's also somebody that said to me that they looked like fish, and which also makes sense because there's a lot of water in the book. So they might be fish. I don't know. But I think, and there's the theme or the idea of the persona in the book that comes a couple of times, and maybe it's to represent that also, that type of persona, of the artist.
And Shira, I know I said that when I read your book, I felt like I was inside your mind, but one of the things that really struck me is the way you sort of structured your panel borders. It was like they were without borders. It was like sometimes your legs would be borders in panels, or not all, like there's an obvious structure there, but it looks kind of chaotic, or you're using things that you wouldn't normally assume as like the traditional gutter as its own border to like move along the story. Why did you make that choice?
To break comics. No, I did not choose to break comics. I did it because I was playing with limitations. I originally wasn't working, I come from a fine arts and a textile background, so I was used to working in bodies of work, and I didn't, I kind of was like vaguely aware of the conventions of panels. My friend Sophie brought them to my attention. And then once I sort of brought them into my work, I started playing with them the way you would play on a swing set or a gymnasium. I started kind of pushing against them. And I always come from that place of what does the story demand? I have a lot of different styles in the book, and I'm telling a lot of different stories. And I wait for the story to tell me what I need to use to best tell it. So I think that's what a lot of those choices came from.
And Dakota, I noticed that you were influenced a lot by like Harvey cartoons and like Casper the Friendly Ghost and things like that. But there's sort of a disturbing, creepy, edgy quality, particularly in the comics about kids, because they're hanging out and getting into trouble, while the adults are away. Now that you have your own child, do you hope that that's what they will be doing when they grow up? Do you like talking about that part of childhood in particular, the part of childhood that's private and away from the adults?
I don't know. I haven't talked a lot about that with my 5-year-old because the conversations are still pretty one-sided.
Yes.
He tells me something over and over and over, and then again. But yeah, he hasn't really expressed much interest in drawing or telling stories. He likes acting things out and pretending to be things. Like anytime he likes something, he's like, I want a mask of that. Can you make me a mask of that? So we have like dozens of like various degrees of quality cereal box masks that I've drawn for him, he's made for himself.
Cool.
But he hasn't really engaged with my work in any way. So that hasn't really been a conversation we've had. But I don't know. I mean, I hope that he sees that in it and feels comfortable exploring his own inner world away from the parents, because I think that's a big part of childhood, is like, being alone in your room, bored with nothing to do, and trying to find your way out of that boredom through whatever seems interesting to you. For me, it was drawing and reading comics, and for him, it might be something different. But I think everybody is enriched by being alone a little bit and finding out where your brain goes during that time. So I very much want that for him.
Mm-hmm. And Keiler, I found myself wondering a lot, like, did she really say that to the radiologist, or like scenes like that? Did some of that stuff actually happen, where you're like kind of taking the piss out of some of the people in your comic a little bit, or like making a joke or mocking them, or is it just something that you wish you said and then later put it down in your
I've never
comic?
mocked anybody. Everything is real, like the conversations get edited down, so usually there's a whole paragraph around what is said, but as much as it can be, it is verbatim, and sometimes like I'll ask my husband, like if I can't quite recall, I'm like, how did you say that? And then he can't remember. I'm like, how would you say that? Gotta get it like as close as possible. Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, just if you're talking about like scenes with my doctors, you know, like.
Seem like I like your dry sense of humor because I have a disability myself. So I appreciate like having the bravery to just, you know, be able to like basically tell them what you think a little bit. You know what I mean? You know what
Yeah, I
mean?
mean, we could get into a whole conversation about like Canadian versus American healthcare. Like you said you don't have a primary care doctor. I have like so many specialists.
Yeah.
You know, and it's almost like, I mean, I'm very lucky to have like amazing health insurance, but I'm not so lucky to need so many different doctors. But I don't know, like I find these really, really interesting people that I actually like really love being with. And I don't know, we have really strange, interesting conversations.
Cool. That's really awesome. It's something I really connected with your work. That's really cool. Awesome. Cool. So now that your works are out and you know, and that kind of thing, what are your hopes for them? Like, is it on to the next book right away? Like, why don't you ask me about what I'm currently working on? Or do you sort of just let it breathe and sort of bask in you know, the achievement of it?
Shira, is this your first book that's coming out? I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
mean, it's gonna be really different for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what
it's
I'm hoping.
it's my first baby. I'm doing some basking and also some moving forward. I'm really, really excited to be here, like to be able to talk to you all and to have any kind of voice. I spent a lot of years keeping the work to myself. So I have a couple of really good new debut friends, actually from Fantagraphics, Lee and oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the other name. Anyway, and we talk a lot about just all the ups and downs and all the weirdnesses of being a brand new debut. So I'm coping with all of that roller coaster and the excitement and the just all of that, and also moving forward, because I think it's really important to not get lost too much in the jazz hand part of it all, and to remember that the work is the thing, and to keep returning to that place seems really crucial. And I hear that's very crucial. So I keep working.
Nice.
It's a weird time to put a book out. It feels like it's out, but it's not out. It's kind of in this abstract purgatory space, like the rest of everything else right now. But I'm with you, Shira. Like when I finish something, it feels exciting for a second, and then it starts to just feel like, well, I got to get back to the drawing board. I need to, you know, that's the part that's exciting and enriching for me is sitting down and working through something. And for me, when a book comes out, I'm really excited about it at first, and then it just feels like a record of mistakes. I'm like, I got to do better next time. And then, you know, a few years later, I might come back to it and look at it and be like, okay, you were all right. You're doing okay. But definitely at the drawing board is where I'm happiest for sure.
I find that the capacity artists have to torment themselves about always doing something better or not being good enough, or not, like, it took me so long to just get here, and I'm just still climbing, right? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
I mean, this is my first book with Drawing Quarterly, so I'm super excited about that. But it's my 7th book, and I self-published the first 3. So it was like very, very different when you do it 100% yourself and like make your little press kit and send out books to people, and you have your hands on everything, and your website is a big deal. I absolutely love like not having to do all this work myself. I feel like it is an ultimate privilege to have people do publicity and to not have to sell your work, because like sitting behind a table at an expo and like watching people like not be interested in you, you know, like I make it so much worse, you know, like it's just it's excruciating. It's like, I feel like if I make it, that really needs to be enough. I don't need to convince you then to like it, you know, you do or you don't. And it's like, oh, that they can convince people to like my book on my behalf. That's so nice.
It's hard promoting your own stuff too. Like
Yes.
you don't have a clear view of it. You're way too close to it. Like you know, I know what I think my work means, but how that reads to somebody else is completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have a few questions from the audience, and I want to leave time for that. The first question is to Dakota, and it's a reference to your discussion about how your 5-year-old son likes how you make masks. This question is from Beth, and she asked, does it blow your mind that a lot of your work has masks or mask themes, and now your 5-year-old is really into masks?
I wonder if I know which Beth that is. I'm going to text my friend Beth after this and find out. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely dawned on me. For anyone who's read my work, they know that I tend to draw a lot of things in masks. I've never totally known why. I like the vibe that it gives off, I guess. A lot of my comics sort of have a creepy, unsettling tone, which is consistent with how I experienced the world as a child. Just sort of, I was a very fearful child. Like, not that my childhood was terrible or anything. I was just scared of a lot of things, and I like creepy things now as an adult. But yeah, it's definitely dawned on me that without really seeing any of my work, my own child has gravitated towards masks. Like, you know, dozens of masks. Like even at Halloween, I made him this really elaborate skull mask because he was really into skeletons. And when he first put it on, it was disturbing. It was like seeing one of my comics pages like dancing around in the house. Oh, and also, I don't know if anyone remembers the iWorks like Disney skeleton cartoon from like the 1930s. It's like a black and white cartoon. But my kid loved that and memorized the whole dance. So he would like dress in full skeleton gear and perform this dance over and over. And it was so cute and so disturbing at the same time. It made me so happy.
That defines parenthood. Cute and
Yeah,
disturbing.
it's the best. It's the best.
We have a question for Shira. Shira, this person, Elizabeth, says, congratulations on your first book. What inspired you to move from fine art to comics?
Thanks for the question, Elizabeth. It's all the same to me. You know, I just think any medium for expression, it's all the same. I'm really drawn towards narrative work. I always was. Even when I was painting, I always wanted to tell stories, and comics are such an amazing medium to do that in, because you don't have to have any money and you can do all this ridiculous, fantastical, surreal stuff. You get to sort of direct your own film. And I got to like bring my textile work and sculpture and all sorts of other things into the medium, and it feels very open to me. So that was my attraction to it. But comics are fine art to me. It's all the same.
And this question is for all of you. Is there something you wish you had the room to add to your book that you didn't get to, or it had to be edited out? Something that ended up on the cutting room floor, or something you wish that you could include but didn't?
No.
Yeah, I also.
Okay, well,
It took me 11 years to write my book, and when it closed up, it closed up. I was like, that is done.
Shira,
It's interesting that you all thought that was.
because you're looking so far back, do you think you brought something different to it because you had all these years to sort of reflect on the experience? Like, was it different looking back rather than if you were writing about it like as it was happening, or more immediately after it happened?
Well, because I don't respect time, I did all of that. Like I look back while I was living it, and then sort of, you know, things, my kid was growing up. And so to have that vantage point, like the 11 years happened because I was parenting and I had to work and I had to keep putting the work down. And so that it really informed the story, and I think enriched it. So thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Awesome. Cool. I think we have time for a few more questions, if anyone has any. I guess though, I want to know, like, what are your plans for the future? You know, now that this book is out and you're here at TCAF and we're celebrating it. What are you working on now, and like what can you share that people can look forward to?
Uh, for me, honestly, it's only been recently that it seems like there even is going to be a future.
Right.
I'm getting my first vaccine tomorrow. I'm really excited about that. I
Nice.
honestly haven't been thinking much about the future. I've just sort of been trying to get
Mhm.
through whatever the last year has been. I have a project that I was working on that I would like to return to, but it feels like I've changed and the world has changed so much that it's going to be a real uphill battle to get back into the headspace of that book. And I feel like a lot of things that have transpired over the last year have sort of changed how I feel about the book, and the way it is right now needs to be different in some way, and I haven't figured out what that is yet. So my main goal for the future is to have some slight protection against COVID, be able to go to my studio more often, and just start putting that time in again so I can find out what that even is.
Wow.
I've got
Awesome.
like 50 pages of the next book, and it's going to be called My Bragging Chart.
Nice.
No, it's not. But I have like 50 pages, and I have to say, like, it is, it is so much better and easier to get through a book launch when I've got like a firm hold on the next one, because all the things that can happen with reviews or whatever, like it just makes your mind go totally crazy, like even if it's good stuff, you think about everything way too much, or I do, like it just, you can't settle down, and just like your intuition goes away because it's dominated by all these thoughts. So I do like to have my foot on something new, but I also feel like, I mean, the pandemic slowed things down a little bit, but I don't know if it's really going to have an effect on like the speed of publishing, which I find really sort of stressful, because it's like your book is announced and then it's like an excruciatingly long time between the announcement and when it comes out. And then there's like this moment, like when it comes out, that's super exciting. And then it's like, if the book is like 3 months old, people are like, well, should I review that? It's kind of old, like, God damn it, does everything have to happen like the month, that your book comes out? I'm really interested in, reading books that came out 5 years ago, like, and I think a lot of people during the pandemic actually finally maybe had time to read like what's on their shelves. And like, I want all those books to be reviewed. I want people to just start reviewing like anything from any time period. And I mean, I guess that's what like comic scholars do. They look back and put it all together for us. But I just I think this like just this like constant need for new, it's like it has a direct relationship to like our short attention span, like whatever's happening right now is not good enough. If, like, I mean, that's like the flip side. It's just kind of like, I don't know, slow down.
This is a bit of an author question. Do you find that there's way more pressure now from publishers, like, or maybe pressure that you put on yourselves to like be successful and like sell well? Like, does the commerce of the book business ever get involved, especially during a pandemic when you're worried that like no one's gonna see your work and might land with a thud?
I go ahead.
No,
Oh,
please.
I would just to say, like, Koyama Press published my last 3 books, and Annie is like so unbelievably supportive that she never said to me like, oh, you didn't sell enough books or anything. She would never say something like that. Like, she was so committed to my work, and like obviously didn't get rich off of it. And it's like there are people like that who are, they have a few people who sell a lot of books. But then that allows them, and galleries are this way too. They have a few artists that sell a ton of work. and then they're able to have some installations and stuff that like that they're really excited about, but they're, you know, not like really lucrative.
Shout out to Annie Koyama. She's doing a Koyama Provides grant right now that's really good and helping independent artists at the moment.
I worry a lot about money. I worry a lot about being able to afford to keep doing this work. It's so labor intensive. It takes so much energy. I feel like I'm treading water, writing grants and hoping for sales. And, you know, it's sad that this, I think a lot about how sad it is that this world, I mean, we wouldn't get 2 feet without artists or parents, frankly. And there's so little actual sustainable support. I've been lucky to be a recipient of support from the Sustainable Arts Foundation and from the Canada Council and the Toronto Arts Council, the Ontario Arts Council, all those places. But it's a constant hustle, and I wish it wasn't. I wish that we could all just do what we do so well, and there was room for more people to do it, and there was real value in this kind of work and real support for artists. So for me, that's how that translates. Is how long can I afford to keep doing this? I'm running from day jobs, and they're coming for me.
And is it something that you think about when you work? Like,
No.
No. Okay.
No, I steal the time, right? I go there because I need to and because I love it, and I'll keep doing it. I would keep doing it in the middle of the night if I, you know, but I wish that there was a resting place for all of us.
Yeah.
And Catherine, what are you working on at the moment? Is there anything on your desk right now?
Yes, I'm trying to finish a book that I started a couple of years ago, and during the pandemic, it transformed completely because of the pandemic, and so the topic changed, and it came together a bit recently. I would say I'm so mixed up now with the months and everything. Everything is such a long year.
Flat.
Everything is the same, but yeah. So it's a book that talks about. The title is Symptoms, and it talks about the body and words and maybe dreams and the impact of words on the body, and yes, that's what I can articulate right now about it. It's not quite finished, but I'm trying to get there. It was supposed to come out last fall, and probably next fall is going to come out, but like I'm wondering with the pandemic, like, because Art Life came out at the beginning of all this in March or April 2020, and I mean, if the pandemic continues into next fall, I don't know if we're going to. I don't know what to think about that. Like, je sais pas. I'm hesitant. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've gone to a sad place.
Yeah, wow. We do have a question for Keiler from Beth Hetland, the same person who asked Dakota a question earlier. She says, for Keiler, I've always admired your ability to be 100% authentically you. How on earth are you not terrified of what people will think of you when putting so much of yourself out in the world?
This is all fake. You have no idea who I am. This is like the me that's meant to be impressive. Covered all up.
Wow, okay. That's awesome though. Okay, so I guess we're like a minute to 8 o'clock. How would you guys like to close? Is there anything that you want to say? Any final thoughts for everybody?
I want to say I hope people out there watching this keep making their work, and they keep just that there's room for more and more and more stories, especially from the margins. Just keep telling your stories. Keep the faith.
That's awesome. Um, uh, I really appreciated everything you guys were doing. Your work was excellent, and I thought all the books were really amazing. Callie, do you have something to say?
I just have some closing words for the panel.
Sure, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much to all of our parenting panelists. This was such a cool and interesting panel. And thank you so much for everyone who attended today's event. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. We did record it, and it will be available at the end of the week on our YouTube channel, and you can watch it as many times as you want until June 16th when it goes into the TCAF vault. Now, I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank our programming sponsor, who is Seneca College School of Creative Arts and Animation. They have a virtual booth in the TCAF Marketplace, so please check them out. A special thanks to the Beguiling Books and Art and page and panel, the TCAF Shop. TCAF wouldn't be possible without government support from Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Art Council, and the Toronto Art Council. And to close, I wanted to highlight one upcoming panel that I'm really excited about. It's Wednesday, May 12th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's called The Secrets of Chocolate with Frankie Alarcon. The Secrets of Chocolate, available in June, follows one of the most renowned chefs within the world of chocolate, Jacques Genon, to create this docucomic series. This is a French language interview hosted by Peter Berkemo, owner of The Beguiling and co-founder of TCAF. To watch this interview, follow Toronto Comics on YouTube. TCAF has so much incredible programming to share this week, so please follow us at Toronto Comics for all of the info and updates. And you can support all of your favorite creators by shopping their work in the TCAF Marketplace at torontocomics.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for doing this. This has been great. I hope you guys all enjoyed our panel. We certainly all did the best we could. And see you next time.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks,
So good to
Erin.
meet you all.
Yeah, good talking
Thanks.
to you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it was heartening. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.